So the next big leap for me, and I may later come back to some others, I didn't really write all this down to try to figure out which came first, which was less. But about 25 years ago, I was in a group and we would read books, and we came across a book called Nonviolent Communication. And in this book, we call it NVC for short. And this is the one that I've been involved with for 25 years. I've taught NVC probably 20 times. I'm in a weekly group of people that we meet together. These people that I meet together every week on the internet, half of those people actually go to the prison and teach NVC to prisoners. It teaches you really the goal of NVC is making life wonderful. The goal is having connections with other people. Marshall Rosenberg is the person that developed NVC, and he says, I started out when I was younger trying to answer the question, what is it that makes some people, they're caring, they're loving, they get along with people? What makes those people be that way and other people who are always at cross purposes with other people? What's the difference? What motivates them? What's the difference? So that's sort of what started him off in NVC, and one of the conclusions he came to was that one of the things that makes us happiest in life is when we're contributing to the well-being of other people. When we're at a certain level, then we really get the most joy out of that. I think maybe that's why these billionaires finally get to the point where a lot of them start giving a lot of money away, because they realize again, back to Maslow's hierarchy of consciousness, you get that level of consciousness where now you want to give. That's the highest level of consciousness. So,
you want to talk about that for a second? Because some people know that, but some people don't.
Maslow, again, was a psychologist who wrote a number of things, but he talked about that as we develop our consciousness, as we develop as human beings, our first level of consciousness is we just want to be able to eat. We want shelter. We want to be able to survive. And once we get that need met, then we can move up to a higher need. And that higher need is how we want to be social. We want to have friends. That's the next level. There's several levels in there, but these are the main levels. And the highest level is after we get those needs met, then we move to a place where we want to be a contribution. And sometimes I'm that way, and sometimes I'm all the way back down to the first one. If I'm really hungry and they're having a big meal, I'm going to jump in and get that food because I'm hungry. So, anyway, those is Maslow's hierarchy of needs was kind of what Marshall Rosenberg might be talking about, is really when we get to a level of what we really want to do is contribute to the well-being of other people, and in so doing we contribute to our own well-being. So I'm talking about NVC, and I'm going to talk about the basic structure of NVC, and the value of this basic structure is, again, like I was talking about earlier and some of the other functions, how can I get my needs met? How can I have a life that I can enjoy, and how can I relate to other people in a way that we can have a connection with each other? They're called the components. There's 4 components of MVC. The first one's observation. Versus evaluation. So a lot of times just starting at that level of connection gets us into trouble. We evaluate. We make up stories. We're making meaning-making machines about other people. NVC, we call it the enemy image, is one of the ways of looking at it. We make other people enemies in certain ways. So we're walking around in a box where we may not fully understand really what's going on with everybody or somebody else, but something they've done, somehow they become an enemy. We're evaluating them in a certain way. The observation might have been they simply were walking down, say, the hallway at school. I'm looking at the person, kind of nodding my head, and that person just walks by and doesn't even see me. So the evaluation would be that person snobbed me and doesn't like me. So all of a sudden they start to there's an enemy image that starts to get set up. The observation would be, that person did not see me. Another evaluation would be they might have been just had a fight with their girlfriend and they were just completely in their own world about that. Or it could be a number of things. It doesn't have to necessarily mean that they stunned you. So it can mean a lot of things, but if you just stick on observation and say that person walked straight by me and didn't see me, then I'm not going to make stuff up about it. This is just what happened. So that's the first stage of NVC. The second one is feelings. So it's very important because people say they have feelings. They say, well, I feel like you shouldn't have done that. Well, that's not a feeling. That's an evaluation. A feeling can be brought down. There's a lot of feelings. As a matter of fact, I have a whole, I'm going to run this by, I have a whole bunch of feelings on this chart. And we'll talk about the others, or needs. We'll talk about that later. But most feelings, probably 90 to 95% of the feelings can be brought down. It's almost like the basic colors, the 3 basic colors. So there's 4 basic feelings that are actual feelings, and it's sad, mad, glad, and afraid. So if you really want to connect with your feelings, you see which one of those categories the feelings might be in. Now let's say you're feeling frustrated. That could be a mixture of sad and fear. It can be a mixture of different feelings that come together to make those more nuanced, those more abstract, complicated types of feelings that we have. So here's the value of feelings, is that because they point to something. And this is very important. What they point to is, what is my need? What is my need behind that feeling? Let's say that this person walks down the hall and I make up in my head that they snobbed me. I'm feeling angry. Usually under anger are the other 2 feelings, fear and sad. So usually if you're feeling angry, you can go down to those 2 and figure out which one really pertains. Let's say that that person, I think they snubbed me. I'm feeling angry. Oh, what's underneath that feeling? I'm feeling sad because, I thought that person liked me. So, and that's the level, that's what the feeling points to, is the need. My need for connection, my need to be cared for, my need to matter. So if you can identify your needs, then you're so much quicker in being able to get those needs met, because the 4th level is request. So I observe something, I feel, I need, figure out what I need. Okay, do I need to make a request of myself or a request of someone else to get that need met? In NVC, Marshall teaches that nobody else is responsible for your needs. You're the one that's responsible for your needs. It kind of goes back to this idea I talked about earlier about, it's my responsibility to look at the world I create. So if I say, I'm in a relationship and I say, well, you shouldn't do that. If you really love me, you wouldn't do that. That would not be a request. That would be the counter to a request is a demand. So those are the 2. Am I making a request or am I making a demand? And this pertains to working with other people. If I demand something from somebody else, like I want you to stay home today and stay home with me today. You can tell the difference between a demand and a request by how the person reacts when the person doesn't meet their request or demand. If they said, I want you to stay home with me today, it would have been a request if you said, no, I really want to go do this, and the person, oh, okay, well, go have fun, enjoy yourself. Then they took it as a request. But if they came back with, oh, you don't care about me, you only care about yourself, they heard it as a demand. So what Marshall teaches is, anytime we hear a demand, we're going to be sorry, or we make a demand, we're going to be sorry, and the other person's going to be sorry. So I have this little card I give out in my classes that says, please, please, please do as I request, only if you can do so with the joy of a young child feeding a hungry duck. Bonnie, my significant other, is scared of ducks, so I say the joy of a young child eating a chocolate duck. So But anyway, you only want people to do things if it brings them joy at some level.
That's appropriate for Easter.
That's right. This is Easter.
Mm-hmm.
Or yesterday was Easter. So
Yeah.
please don't do as I request. Only if you're doing it to please me, to do it because you think I'll like you more, because you'll feel guilty if you don't. Please don't do it for any of those reasons. Only do it if it brings you joy at some level. Now, that doesn't mean it's the kind of joy you might normally think of that you tie to happiness. It's a kind of joy that might tie to you, like say, I got to get up today and go to work and make money so I can put food on the table for the family. That might not make you happy, but it brings you joy because you know I can provide for my family. So that's the kind of joy we're talking about. Please only do as I request if it can bring you joy at some level. Now, living in a relationship like that, I think for a lot of people, I can say it for me as well, it takes a lot of growth to be able to bring yourself to never ever wanting anybody to do anything unless at some level it brings you joy. So those are the 4 components of NVC. Marshall Rosenberg would go around the world and teach NVC to groups. Here's an example. He went to a tribe in Africa, and both these warring tribes were killing each other. And by the time he finally got there, 100 more people had died. He set these 2 warring tribes chiefs down and taught them NVC. And after about 2 or 3 days, they finally said, hey, if we had known this, we don't have to kill each other. Because NVC is figuring out how, number one, identifying what your need is, which I talked about earlier, my feelings, here's my need, and then figuring out a strategy to get that need met that works for both of us. And almost every time, if you can get both people to get down to what their real needs are, they can then work out a strategy to get everybody's needs met. Another example was that he would teach NVC in prisons a lot, and then one of the guys that was in his class says, you know what? If I had known this, I wouldn't have had to kill my best friend. So these are some of the far-ranging attributes of NVC. I mean, just to name a few. I highly recommend, if you want to know more about NVC, on YouTube, it's about a 3 hour and 5 minutes, I think, something like that, YouTube tape presentation by Marshall Rosenberg on NVC, nonviolent communication, where he'll go through pretty much what NVC is all about, how you can work it in your life, and it's really a wonderful introduction into what NVC is really about. And in the past, when I've taught or facilitated, Marshall says we never really teach anything, we just remind people of what they already know. When I facilitate NVC, a lot of times will show that 3 hour video, because for me, I always like, when I'm learning something, I like to know the big picture is. That way, then when I have to fill in the pieces, it makes more sense to me. So I highly recommend that video for if you want to find out more how you can live in a world that you can enjoy your life more and get along with other people, and so that we don't have to kill each other. Nonviolence is not so much about killing each other physically, but violence is the way we treat each other, and those using the voice or using a sharp tongue, or back to TA, playing those games where we don't feel good after the transactions. So, and then let me come back to some of this, because all this stuff really relates